Hey friends, we are back again together and today we will be discussing about estimation of serum total protein by biuret method, which is the topic will be covered under 11 subheadings which are mentioned here, and then it will be followed by question and answers. So first let us discuss about what exactly serum total proteins comprise of. The serum total proteins comprise of two fractions, that is albumin and globulin. Albumin is synthesized in liver and it is the chief serum total protein, and its main function is maintenance of blood osmotic pressure among other functions, which we shall see later. The globulins contain alpha globulins, beta globulins and gamma globulins. The alpha globulins and beta globulins both are synthesized in the liver. The alpha globulins are of alpha 1 and alpha 2 types. Example of alpha 1 is alpha 1 antitrypsin, and example of alpha 2 is alpha lipoprotein, which is also known as ApoA. Alpha 1 antitrypsin protects the lungs from neutrophil elastase, whereas apoprotein A helps in transport of lipids and fat-soluble vitamins. The beta globulins consist of beta 1 and beta 2. Beta 1 example is beta lipoprotein and beta 2 example is C-reactive protein. The beta lipoprotein again helps in transport of lipids and fat-soluble vitamins, whereas C-reactive protein is seen to play an important role in various inflammatory processes. The gamma globulins, which are synthesized in the lymphatic tissue, the only fraction that is not synthesized in the liver, comprises of 5 types of antibodies known as immunoglobulins G, A, M, D and E. They provide us immunity. Now, if instead of serum we take plasma, then there is a third fraction apart from albumin and globulin, which includes fibrinogen. And this fibrinogen protein is also synthesized in the liver and it plays an important role in coagulation. So as you can see, the serum total proteins contain 6 components, that is albumin, alpha 1 and alpha 2 globulins, beta 1 and beta 2 globulins and gamma globulins, which makes 6 of them, whereas in plasma there is a 7th component, which is the fibrinogen. So this is what you have to remember. Now, what are the chief functions of plasma proteins? They maintain blood osmotic pressure, they transport substances, various drugs and toxic elements, they promote inflammation, and they also have a very protective function through the complement cascade and antibodies. They play a very important role through blood coagulation. The chief significance, the clinical significance of protein estimation is the change that the total protein undergoes. It's mainly due to albumin concentration because that is the chief protein, and whenever there is increase in total protein, that is chiefly because of dehydration or overproduction. We'll see this a little more in detail a little later. And the decreased levels are found mainly in malnutrition, impaired synthesis, protein loss as in hemorrhage or excessive protein catabolism. Now let us look at the various methods of estimation. Today we will be performing the Biuret's test, but apart from that there are other methods which include the Geldahl's method, the Lowry's method and the Bradford's method. The Geldahl's method is an old method which is very tedious and cumbersome, and it takes more than 24 hours time to perform. The Lowry's and Bradford's method are generally used to estimate tissue or cellular proteins. So let us now see the details of Biuret's colorimetric endpoint method. Uh, the principle of this method includes the binding of peptide bonds, that is the CONH bond, to the cupric ion in alkaline medium. So when the cupric ion binds with the CONH bonds of proteins, it forms a violet colored complex, and the absorbance of the violet colored complex is proportional to the concentration of protein or the number of peptide bonds present, and the reading is taken at 540 nanometers. So the chief principle is that the molecules containing two or more peptide bonds that are soluble in aqueous medium will react with Biuret's reagent to form a colored complex. So any protein that is not soluble in aqueous medium will not be detected by Biuret's reagent. Now let us see the reaction mechanism. The reaction mechanism shows that protein is binding with the cupric ions which is present in the Biuret reagent in alkaline medium, and it is forming a protein copper complex. You can see at least four peptide bonds are joining: 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so these will form the colored complex. This is a large molecule, and the length or the size of the molecule will depend upon the size of the protein or the peptide. This will lead to the formation of a violet color, and the reading will be taken at 540 nanometers. The exception to this Biuret's test is given by urea, which is similar to the CONH bonds. Although it is non-protein or a non-peptide, because it contains NH2CONH2, which bears resemblance with the peptide bond, it also reacts with the cupric ions in alkaline medium to form a copper color complex, which is known as biuret, and it gives a violet. What is the composition of biuret's reagent? It is made up of NaOH, which provides the alkaline medium. It also has cuprous copper sulfate, which gives the cupric ions to bond with the CONH bonds, and it has sodium potassium tartrate, which is added to chelate and stabilize the cupric ions so that the bond formed or the complex formed is stable. So now we will see what are required uh, for this practical. We need a colorimeter, we need Biuret's reagent, we need distilled water, a protein standard of known concentration, test sample, 100 microliter pipette, pipette tips, test tubes with labeling. So after we have arranged for all the requirements, now we have to collect the blood. So generally we collect venous blood samples, and the total protein can be estimated both in plasma and serum. So for plasma we can take EDTA vacuity or a heparin vacuity, whereas for serum we can take a vacuity having a red cap which has a clot activator. So the most commonly used vacutainer is a vacuity having clot activator. After collecting the blood, now the next step will be to separate the serum and plasma. So for that we need to centrifuge. These are the test tubes. Currently we are showing only 2 test tubes, otherwise this whole rack can be full, and depending upon the centrifuge's capacity we can centrifuge as many vacuities as per the capacity of the centrifuge. So on centrifugation, depending upon the vacutainer, we will get the serum or plasma. After centrifugation, we will get serum or plasma. Now let us see the difference between serum and plasma. In case of serum, there will be blood clot formation due to utilization of fibrinogen. Because this vacuity contains a clot activator, it will use the fibrinogen and a clot will be formed. This will be solidified and the remaining fluid will have various molecules and electrolytes. On the other hand, the plasma, there will be no clotting because we have added an anti-clotting factor in it. For example, in vacuity containing purple cap, there is EDTA. So EDTA will not allow the blood to clot by chelating the calcium, and so it will be divided into 3 layers. The RBCs will settle down due to its weight, but they will not form a clump. Then there will be a thin white sediment of RBCs and platelets above the thin white layer of WBCs and platelets. That is why it will be whitish in color, and above that will be the plasma, which will contain fibrinogen. So the serum has no fibrinogen, whereas plasma has fibrinogen. Now we will do the procedure for estimation of total protein. This is a live demonstration of Biuret's method by which you will estimate serum total protein. First, 100 microliter of blank is added in the test tube labeled blank. Blank means distilled water. In the second tube labeled standard, now 100 microliter of standard will be added, and after changing the tip, 100 microliter of test sample will be added. This test or the sample is a pooled sera obtained from blood donors from the blood bank of our hospital. After having added these, now 5 ml of Biuret solution will be dispensed in each of the tube. As you can see here, 5 ml volume has been fixed, and now 5 ml will be dispensed. This solution of copper sulfate or the Biuret reagent, which consists of copper sulfate, is blue in color. After mixing and waiting for 10 minutes, there will be completion of the reaction, and then we will see the change in color. Once the reaction is over and we compare the change in color of each tube, we will also take the live absorbance or reading in colorimeter. See, now the reaction has reached its end point. So now it's ready to take the readings. So before that, let us see a comparison. This comparison is between blank and standard. The blank is blue in color, whereas the standard was purple or violet in color. Now you can see standard and test. As you can see, the standard is more intense than the test. Now all the 3 tubes of blank, standard and test will be compared. As you can see, the intensities of color are different in each tube. Let us see whether it corresponds to the absorbance or not. As this follows the Beer's law, we will see that after setting 0 with distilled water at 540 nanometers, first the absorbance of blank will be taken, which is 0.05. Then the absorbance of standard will be taken, which is 0.36 or 37 as displayed, and then the absorbance of test is 0.27 as displayed on the monitor. So once we have performed the test, let us see the procedure. What we did, actually let us revise through it. There are 3 test tubes labeled blank, standard and test. So each of these tubes we will add 100 microliters of distilled water in blank, 100 microliters of standard having known concentration of 6 grams per deciliter in standard, and 100 microliters of patient sample in the test tube labeled test. After that, we will dispense 5 ml of the Biuret's reagent. We will mix the contents of each tube separately and then wait for 10 minutes and then take the reading at 560 nanometers. Now, if your equipment does not have this wavelength, then you can take a wavelength close to 560 nanometers, which may be 540 or 570. That will give you reliable readings. As you saw in the demonstration that the readings were for test was 0.27, but the reading for blank was 0.05 because it had its own color. And for the standard the reading was 0.37 and the reading of blank was 0.05. So we have to minus the reading of the blank, and then we obtain this concentration, that is 4.1 gram per deciliter. Reference range of total protein is 6 to 8 grams per deciliter. So now based on this we will make our calculation. In the previous slide we just saw that the patient sample has 4.1 gram, so which is much lower than this gram, than the reference range. So we must learn now how to interpret the obtained value based on the reference range. So let us see how we interpret. So whenever serum total protein whose reference range is 6 to 8 grams per deciliter, if it is less than 6 grams, it is hypoproteinemia, and if it is more than 8 grams per deciliter, it is hyperproteinemia. So the next point we will discuss are the causes of hypoproteinemia and hyperproteinemia. So the causes of hypoproteinemia are categorized into 3 chief causes, that is decreased production, increased loss or redistribution. The decreased production may be due to protein malnutrition, defective synthesis, whereas increased loss can be due to protein losing enteropathy, or it can be due to nephrotic syndrome, or it can be due to excessive burns. The redistribution may be because of inflammation of vasculature, which happens in sepsis, or it can be due to hemodilution. So these are the causes of hypoproteinemia. Now what are the effects of hypoproteinemia. Generally, hypoproteinemia, if it is because of decrease in albumin, there will be decreased osmotic pressure, which will lead to edema. That is the one of the effects of hypoproteinemia. If the hypoproteinemia is because of decreased globulin, then there will be decreased immunity in that person, and if it is due to decreased fibrinogen and clotting factors, then there will be bleeding tendencies observed in that patient. Now let us discuss hyperproteinemia. Though we have not done any sample here of a patient having high values of protein, which are very rare to find, but still we must know the causes. So let us see. The causes are again divided into two chief categories, that is hemoconcentration and increased production of proteins. So hemoconcentration is generally due to excessive water loss, and what causes the water loss? It can be vomiting, it can be inadequate water intake, it can be diarrhea, it can be Addison's disease, or it can be diabetic acidosis. Increased production of proteins can be due to multiple myeloma or chronic inflammation, for example in tuberculosis. So these are some causes of hyperproteinemia. Now we'll also see the one more method, which is Agaro's gel electrophoresis method, which help us to identify different fractions of serum proteins. At the moment we know that they are either albumin or they are globulins. Now which type of globulins they are, that also sometimes may become important to know, because it helps us in differential diagnosis. So let us see. Whenever we do electrophoresis of serum proteins, we see the first migrating protein is albumin, second is followed by alpha 1 globulin, then alpha 2 globulin, then beta globulins and gamma globulins. So if we put the sample at the negative electrode, that is the cathode, and then we run the gel, the fastest molecule will be albumin, followed by alpha 1 globulin, then alpha 2 globulin, then beta 1, beta 2 globulins, and finally it will be the immunoglobulins. So this is how the bands will separate. This cannot happen if we are estimating the serum proteins through Biuret method. We can only come to know the concentration. But here we can come to know individual proteins and their relative percentages. So this is the electrophoretogram of plasma. This is how, if we measure the peaks by concentration, this is how it will appear as per their relative percentages. So there is a very easy way of remembering. We can just compare it to a fist with 3 fingers folded of right hand. The right hand, if you fold 3 of your fingers, middle fingers, and just leave the little finger open and the thumb open, it will resemble the electrophoretogram of serum proteins. And it will be easy for you to remember, because the little finger will indicate albumin, followed by alpha 1, alpha 2, beta and gamma. Gamma will be indicated by the thumb. So this is a very interesting and a nice way to remember the electrophoretogram pattern of normal serum sample. Now, agar gel electrophoresis, if we do of plasma proteins, we will get another conspicuous band after the gamma band, and that will be the band due to fibrinogen. So if protein electrophoresis is performed using plasma, it will produce an additional distinct band between the beta and gamma zones due to the fibrinogen. And this band will look like the shape of M, and this similar band is also seen in patients having multiple myeloma, and it can be confused with the M band of multiple myeloma. So we have to be very careful in remembering whether we have chosen plasma or serum as the sample. So there are various clinical abnormal patterns that we can detect with the help of electrophoresis related to serum proteins. Various abnormalities can be identified. They are nephrotic syndrome, cirrhosis of liver, alpha-1 antitrypsin, chronic infection, multiple myeloma, primary immune deficiency, the details of which is beyond the scope of this. But however, we will discuss one case here. We have already talked about multiple myeloma. Now we will see one more case of nephrotic syndrome. So you can see here in nephrotic syndrome, this is a drawing in which you see that the normal, and compare it with normal. See, this is a normal person sample and this is a patient sample having nephrotic syndrome. How do we identify that the person has nephrotic syndrome? You will see that the albumin band is thinner. The relative percentage of albumin is thin. So now in order to compensate for this reduced band, the larger protein which may not be able to pass through the nephrons, that is the alpha 2 fraction, its relative percentage will increase because the body will try to maintain the total protein. Okay, so this is what is happening here in case of nephrotic syndrome. And now we'll see a real gel. This is how the gel running looks like. This is a black and white picture. So this is the normal albumin band. This is a diffused or a faint albumin band in nephrotic syndrome patient. And here you can see that the alpha 2 band is prominent, whereas this is in relative proportion. This is normal. And this is quite darkly stained, which means it is increased in concentration. So this is how it will look in nephrotic syndrome. So the hallmark of nephrotic syndrome gel electrophoresis pattern is that the alpha 2 band will be prominent and the albumin band will be faint in staining. This is of nephrotic syndrome. Again you can see that this is a prominent alpha 2 band. Here alpha 2 is much reduced compared to albumin, but since here albumin has reduced, you can see this downward arrow, the alpha 2 globulin has increased to compensate. So in patients with nephrotic syndrome, usually the albumin band will be low and the condition may also produce increased alpha 2